Ready?
Ready.
Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here. My guest today comes from a carnival in Brazil.
Yes.
Cristiane Bertoluci. Welcome to Fiberchats.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in your show. We had a great conversation at Vogue Knitting.
I know it was so fun to meet you there in person and like to hang out a little bit. You told me that you've been knitting for 30 years. I mean,
Yes.
first of all, you look too young to be knitting for 30 years, but tell me how you learned, who taught you?
Yeah, usually people think that my mom swallowed two needles and I started like knitting in her bed, but no, I'm 40 years old. I started knitting when I was 8. My mom was an avid knitter. She started a clothing store by knitting her own garments, and then she started selling at her play at our house. And then when we saw it, she was like buying stuff from other brands and selling, and that's how her store started. And when she was knitting, I used to love watching her knitting, and I would ask her to teach me, even though she didn't have the patience. She did teach me how to knit, and I didn't knit as much as many people like do when I was younger, but I always did like a scarf or something every once in a while for friends. And then I went to fashion school in South Brazil. And South Brazil, for those who don't know, it's a very cold place. We do get snow in Brazil, and it's especially my hometown. And so they have a lot of brands for knitwear. They have a lot of, especially in the fashion school started there because of knitwear companies that were there. And I could work in a company that sold knitting machines, very industrial. If you guys see Uniqlo's whole garment, yeah, that's the kind of brand I was working with, the brand that does the machine, that does the Uniqlo. And actually, when I was working there in 2006, they had the first machines that did whole garments. So it was pretty much watching a top down, like being born in 1 hour. But that gave me a lot of knowledge on pattern making, on stitches, on yarns, all these kind of things. And after I graduated, I moved to São Paulo, which is like a bigger place and has a lot of opportunities. And after working as a fashion designer for a while, I decided the fashion world was not my place. I didn't know what to do, but I didn't know how to knit. And a lot of things happen in Brazil when you have something so like you have a special knowledge. It seems like things happen, and people started asking for classes, for garments, for fashion shows, all of this. So I decided to go to Brighton in UK to have a creative knitwear course to be more like specific. And I always thought I would come back. It was like 2-month course, and I thought I was going to come back to Brazil and work as a knitwear designer. I was like, I'm going to be a knitwear designer. That's my thing. And then when I came here, a store opened, a very different yarn shop opened called Novelaria. And they wanted like different kind of classes, something more modern, something different. We're starting like that was 2011. So YouTube was being like more active, and Facebook, all of this. And then I started teaching there, and I thought that was the best. And that's how I started in 2010. And after that, I've been pretty much like the person to look for when people talk about knitting, because it's been so many years I've been researching. I had a master's degree in fashion that I did work with hand knittings and worked with sustainability and everything involving hand knitting and crafts. And yeah, that's been it. It's been like a long journey.
Right. Well, when I think of Brazil, it's very multicultural. It's like another melting pot, just like the US, right? There's a lot of cultures. There's people from different European countries. There are, and the local people, whatever. Like it's a mix.
Yes.
Do you feel like because of that, it's different culture when it comes to knitting as well?
Yes, it is really different. especially because like usually when you go to a few places, like you do have continental knitting, you do have like all these kind of things, and like for example, most of people in US they need English style,
Right.
and most people in Europe they need continental and here we have the Portuguese style as well. That is a different way of knitting for those who don't know. So I think it's all like mixed up. You don't go to a class that everybody knows the same way of knitting. So when I started actually, and I was 27, I knew how to knit my own way. But when I got to a class, people were knitting all different ways. It's just like, don't expect everybody doing what you are doing. They want to do what they do. They know how to do. So I had to adapt to all these cultures as well. When we talk about South Brazil, for example, we do need continental, but we need it the wrong way. We need through the back loop, and
Right.
the cross stitch is different as well. So you cannot knit when you knit in the round. You have to learn the right way. So when I was teaching my mom to do her first top-down sweater, she was just like, "Why do I have to knit this way? I'm gonna knit my own way." And when she did it, it was all wrong, and she was like, "Oh, now I get it. I learned the wrong way," and I was like, "Yep." We do
Actually, not. It's funny enough. It's not
a different way. The
a
different way.
because
Yeah, the different way.
that's the way I knit actually.
Really?
Yeah, and I put tutorials on my channel to show how to read your knitting and how to understand the stitch orientation, because
Wow.
a lot of people, when they see that style, they think it's wrong. But the reality of it is, as long as you understand the fabric you're trying to create, there is no wrong style.
Yeah,
There's
it's different. Yeah.
So it just takes a little bit of learning about it.
Yeah, and it's funny, especially because since I speak English, and and I forgot to say in the whole story, I did work in a yarn brand when I came to São Paulo. My first job in São Paulo in 2007 was in a yarn brand that I had to learn already all this. And when we need Portuguese style, for example, when we talk about knitting in Brazil, the verb for knitting is the purl stitch. So if I have to translate anything, I do a lot of translations for books, and so if I have to translate, it's a mess because the verb is the other stitch. So if I tell people like knit, they're going to purl. So a whole mess. It's difficult.
I actually
And then
had the conversation with somebody at Vogue Knitting that in different languages, like people use different words for, like in English, you have separate word for knitting and for crochet. Whereas in Spanish or in Russian, for example, it's the same word. So you just say
wow.
it with one hook or I need with two needles. But
Wow.
it's the same
I didn't
word.
know that.
Yeah. So it's I can see how that can be confusing.
Really
Well.
challenging.
Yeah.
And I love that in English, they're verbs. It's just like knit and purl, they're verbs. So you can just say like just knit and purl. In Portuguese, we have to say knit the knit stitch, knit the purl stitch. We have to even work that, and that makes a whole mess for understanding. But it is the purl stitch because purling in Portuguese style is a lot easier than knitting. And so every time I have a pattern in Portuguese, for example, something that is in the round that I know people are going to knit in Portuguese style, I always have a pattern for knit and a pattern for purl stitches, because I know for them it's a lot easier. In some point they are going to ask me, can I purl it? Can I just like do? Yes, you can. I'll have the pattern in Portuguese style as well.
Well, when you are a fashion designer by trade, is it like we're talking about fast fashion, right? Things change rapidly. Today it's super popular. Tomorrow nobody wants to wear it. And the knitting is the complete opposite of that spectrum. You're in the slow fashion. Was that difficult for you, like going from fast fashion to slow fashion?
Yes, it was. I did work as a fast fashion designer. My last job before going into knitting was a designer at a fast fashion brand that was rising. We would pretty much copy Urban Outfitters. Anything Urban Outfitters did, we were doing it. So it was like this. It's like fast information. We have to do it. I remember it was the World Cup. We had to have a collection in 15 days for the World Cup. Like everything is so fast, and we have a lot of desires for like new things all the time. So, but I think I think I went to knitting, especially because I was so full of it. I was like, every time we were doing stuff, and then sometimes we will have to have like this whole like the World Cup collection. Let's have it. We had the whole cup, the World Cup collection. It didn't sell. Now you have to sell it. Now you have to find ways of selling it. And then now you have to have ways of like having sales for it. So everything was so stressed out that I was just like, I hate fashion. When I left this brand, I was just like, I hate fashion. I want the opposite of it. I never thought I would work with fashion like the way I work, but I always thought like I'm never doing anything about creative stuff. I wanted to go to, I don't know, sustainability in a different way, maybe going to have more environmental friendly kind of initiatives and stuff. But then when I decided to go to Brighton, it was good because I saw the way they handled things and how they were careful about the things they were doing and how it gave me a different way of looking to the things I was doing. And I think it was more natural because I was full of it. I was just like, I can't stand it anymore. So it was kind of natural for me to just go into the opposite direction. But I think it's more interesting to see my students when they come to my classes. Most people, like here in Brazil, knitting is still growing. And I think it's interesting to see like people coming and then deciding like in the first, like I love the first class, they're just like, I'm doing all of it. And then they take like 3 weeks to do a scarf and they're like, no, this takes such a long time. And then when you buy something, it's just like you buy it, you wear it twice, and then you already throw it away. And when you do something, I think you care a lot more about it. So you want to wash it differently. You want to understand the fabric you're using. You want to understand that all. So I do like how handcraft, they also teach you a lot about fast fashion as well. It's just like, this is not correct. Right. Like if it takes so long, this is not correct. Like it's not so good. And especially how it's so easy for us to be sick of something we buy. It's just like I said, we wear it twice and we don't want it anymore. And when we do something, like we always want to wear it. We always like have the appreciation for what we did. So
well,
yeah.
you mentioned to me that like one of your desires coming back to Brazil was to change the mentality of Brazilian crafters. In what way? Just are we talking just sustainability and appreciation of handcrafts?
Actually valuing it more like a cultural heritage we have. Brazil is really strong on, we do have a lot of knitting, and it's good to see, like, for example, the way we knit is different in many places. Once I remember I had a student who was 10 years old and he was researching about knitting, and he said, oh, in the Amazon, people knit English style because a lot of the English went there at some point, and so everybody knits English style. And he didn't even know what English style was. And I was like, how do you know? I was researching. But I think one thing that I wanted to change was especially, and this is a conversation, after New York, I was in Denver and I had a class, and there was this one Brazilian girl that she gave me a different point of view as well. In Brazil, we don't value so much the handcrafts. And then talking to her, she gave me this amazing point of view that is, in Brazil, when you when you do something by yourself, when you do something for you, it's considered, for a long time, it was considered like poor people did it. Right. Rich people could buy it, and poor people were sewing, were crocheting, and this kind of. So we see it as a minor kind of, like, if crafts are already divided from arts and they're considered minor, kind of like undervalued. Here in Brazil, it's just like no value at all.
It's interesting because like I usually tell, like if I tell a story of my knitting. So my grandmother was extremely crafty and my mom knew how to do everything. But for her, it was you knit or you sew, you crochet out of need. And if you are successful, you go and you buy. And so when I learned to knit, like I was probably like 7 or 8, one summer, my grandma taught me how to knit. And I came home with my knitting needles and my ball of yarn. And I was so proud that I'm knitting. And my mom was like, what are you doing? Like, this is such a waste of time. Just go and play and go like do something else. And that was the end of knitting for me for like a very long time. So wow. Mentality, especially like after the Second World War, that was the mentality that now we out of this need, out of this poverty, and we, you know, we can buy things.
One thing that we learned in fashion school actually is just like this. In the 40s, because of the war, they were very crafty in fashion as well. They would take like the wardrobe from their husband that left and stuff and made their own fashions. And then when the 50s came, we had Christian Dior, who was doing like, he was taking all the polyester and he was doing that fluffy skirt. He was doing all of it. So this is exactly what we learned. It's just like, you want to buy Dior, you don't want to do your stuff anymore because you are just like, you're traumatized by it. You had to do it out of need. Like you said, it's out of need. And here in Brazil, it's still like this, like the 40s didn't come out. Like even we had the 70s and the 60s that were very crafty eras. It's still in Brazil, like if you buy stuff, it's like more valuable than doing. So we were even talking in Endeavor about this, like how knitting is an expensive kind of craft because you have a lot of tools, you have like the yarn and all of this. And then in Brazil, it's more difficult, especially for this, because people that do a lot of crafts, they don't have the accessibility to this kind of expensive things. So I think we see it. So what I wanted to change, first of all, is understanding that crafts, they tell a story. We have a story. For example, Renaissance lace came to Brazil and they had 3 stitches that they knew how to do. And then if you go to the northeast of Brazil, there are more than 60 that they did it by themselves. They just like came out of their heads and they grew it by 60 kind of stitches for Renaissance. So there is this story behind how did it happen, how like this one lace came to Brazil and how did somebody one day just saw this one stitch, oh, I can do it differently. And then there's the second until it became 60. If you look at the indigenous peoples in Brazil, for example, there is this one video that I love about weaving, and they show their patterns, and then they show the patterns like, oh, this is the pattern for the butterfly, this is the pattern for the spider, this is the pattern. So they have all these patterns that they did just by themselves. It's just like nobody taught them. They just did it because it felt like their culture. They even have the story of the spider. Once the spider bit the hand of the weaver, and that's how she knew she should take the cotton and then start how do you say? I forgot. Spinning. Yeah, you start spinning the cotton and make your weave. So we have a lot of stories that are not told that. It's in crafts. It's just like if you talk to your grandmother that taught you, she might have a story of somebody who taught her, and then all this kind of stuff. So also valuing the handcrafts more, and also researching this story so we can even value it more.
Right.
So,
well, let's talk about your book a little bit, because last year it was published in Brazil. Congratulations on that. And it has 13 designs, you said?
Yes.
Top down butter.
Yes.
Well, so when it comes to writing patterns, it's also like different cultures have different traditions of how to write the patterns. And I know that like a lot of people who live outside of America find it difficult to write patterns for American market because Americans expect a lot of hand holding. They expect you to explain every technique that's mentioned in the pattern and a lot of information. Whereas like in European countries, for example, it's very minimal instructions. They sort of assume that you already know all of this. How is it in Brazil?
It's a mixture of both actually, but my patterns, they're more European kind of patterns. I like to, the less I explain, the better. I think when Brazilian people, they see a long pattern, they get scared of it, but then everything you decide not to put. I've had patterns that are all well explained, and then people like just scared of it and they don't read it. But then everything you write in a pattern, they come and ask you. So the best is I have the book, but I also have a course, like an online course for people to read like the first pattern and then keep following it. But I do like to have it more. But it's really my way of knitting. I do like to have it like not so well explained. It's just explaining the minimum. Even for swatch, I don't say like it's there for blocking. Nobody has asked me what is blocking is. They just ignore it and they just do the swatch their own way, and that's it. But usually in Brazil, yeah, we don't explain that much. And also we have a lot of, one thing that we do is just like I said, Portuguese is very difficult to understand, especially for this. You have to write knit the knit stitch, knit the purl stitch, yarn over, knit the yarn over. So the explanation can be huge. But I think once you have like, I'm more than a number person, more than grammar. I'm more math than grammar. So one thing I try to do to put in my book is more like how do you say, like spreadsheet, having like how many times do you increase. So once you learn how to increase, you know how many times you have to increase, and that's it.
Tell me about this book, like how the idea of writing a book came to you. How did you approach it? What was the process like?
I always loved once I started knitting on the round. It wasn't very common in Brazil having a circular needle, and especially no top down. So once I started knitting in the round, one thing that I was kind of like, I say I'm almost like a priest when I learn something, I'm just like, everybody has to know about this. Like, come here, we have to talk about this now. So when I learned the circular needle, I was already like telling everybody. When I did my first top down, that was it. Just was like, everybody has to knit top down sweaters. It's just, why are we sewing? Why are we doing this? And then I started, for a long time, I started teaching circular needles and then top down. This is always like a class everybody was asking me. And after a while, like I said, I have the publishing from Brazil that did my book. They were a craft and fiber art publisher, and they had magazines, like 4 times a year they had a magazine. And then one day I told the owner, like, oh, I really want to write a book for top-down sweaters. Since I've been teaching for so long, I think it's something new, it's something different, and it would be good for us to like have a first book about this. At the time, they were more like into going more cultural kind of things, but then we kind of brought it up together to have a story of how the last 10 years, like handcrafts had a different story in Brazil, especially with YouTubers and influencers and Instagrammers. We have like a different view of it, and then taking like 13 designs that I've already done and just turning into a book.
Well, let's talk a little bit about YouTube and Instagram and all that jazz, because it really made the world super small. Suddenly, yes, like you and I are chatting, right? And we are thousands of miles apart. How did that affect the Brazilian fiber market?
I think this is like the thing that has been valuing it a lot more. We are a world of crochet. I do love crochet as well. And I think I'm a better crocheter than I'm a knitter. Now, I think I'm good at both, but I do love crochet as well. I think in Brazil, what happened was, like, I remember when I started, I was like the cover of a magazine, and that was the beginning of Facebook. And I remember like getting, I don't know, 100 messages on Facebook of people telling me like, oh, I've knitted my whole life and I am ashamed of knitting because my friends keep telling me it's something for old people. Well, oh, I've always been interested in knitting. I want to learn, and all these messages that you get. And then I remember we used to have meetings for people who knit and crochet, embroider, all of this. We would get like 150 people in a park knitting, embroidering. So I think that was the beginning. And then when we started seeing like YouTubers doing it, I think it kind of opened up people's mind about like, oh, everybody can do it. Everybody can learn. It's not so difficult. I think it kind of like answered a lot of questions people had about this. And in Brazil, I think we have a lot of very big influencers in Brazil. I did travel a while ago to meet this company that does recycled yarn, and they have a YouTuber that works with them, and he's got like 2 million followers, I guess. So it's a huge market in Brazil, and we see all kinds of people doing it. This is the fun part. Usually when we had craft kind of TV shows or whatever, we would have somebody who would learn it and teach it there, because they were like famous people teaching. And now we see people becoming famous because they teach. So this is a different shift as well. Like people who know the technique, they're more valued than, I don't know, famous people just for being famous. So yeah, I think we have a big difference.
Are you planning to do like the online classes, online tutorials and all of that?
I do have a lot of class. I do have a few classes in Portuguese. I'm planning to do them in English for now. I do teach at Vogue Knitting online. I already taught, like last year, I think I taught 8 classes. What I want to do now is go more into, I did teach a lot of like top-down techniques. What I want to do now is going more into summer designs as well, because since this is Brazil and we have the knowledge about pattern making for summer, bikini, all the kind of things. I'm having a plan of like increasing this for me too, like having more tutorials and patterns in English for summer designs as well. But I do have 3 courses in Brazil. I have one that is just for top down, that you can read my book and it's just like following the book. And I have one that is creative knitwear, that I teach all pattern making for knitting. I teach like the whole step by step, like what is armholes? How do you do armholes in knitting? What is like neckline? How do you do neckline in knitting? How do you do a sleeve? How do you do different kinds of sleeve for people who want to be more like more creative into fashion? And it's also like the history of knitting, understanding fibers, all of this. It's like a complete kind of course that I did. It was very ambitious, and I did it last year.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your ambitions. Where do you see yourself going with that?
This year, well, Vogue Knitting did a lot of changes for me as well. Like going to starting like teaching online for Vogue was like different kind of way of looking at my work as well. And for this year, like I'm being ambitious for still selling this course, still having more of this course, traveling a lot as well. Last year, I did get the chance of going to 7 cities in Brazil, I think, for releasing shows for my book and having classes. So every time I would release a book, they would ask for classes as well. So it was like a lot of fun for like traveling and teaching. And so this year I want to keep doing that, because a lot of people who didn't go last year, they already write like asking me for this year. And I'm trying to go back to US for a few more fairs this year as well for teaching. Since I do have the pattern making course, I do think about a pattern making book for like that's going to take longer, but I really want to do that for fashion designers, especially for this. Like when we study fashion, it's really hard to have knitwear design, especially here in Brazil. So it's harder to have like somebody that explains you knitwear design, because it's totally different than tailoring. It's totally different than fashion in general. You have to learn a lot by doing it. So I do have the idea of doing that, and a few online classes are coming as well. And for my YouTube channel is just starting. I had a few classes last year, and then I want to keep increasing a lot of things that I do there. I have like a basic knitting course. I do have one for knitting a tank top that needs no swatch, nothing. I want to have an English version of it. What else? Well, a lot of things. I do have, I'm never in one plan. I'm just like, I'm like, how do you say, octopus. I have too many plans.
What was your favorite moment of being at Vogue Knitting Live this year?
I loved when, well, Nada, she's like, I don't know, she's like the like my boyfriend even told me, like, I told him, like, I walked around with Nada and everybody knows her. And he was like, oh, she should have a job, like a diplomatic job in Brazil. I mean, so walking around with her and meeting all the people was like, for me, the best time I had. But also the teachers meeting we had on Thursday. And then we know the teachers. I know who Patty Lyons is, but I saw Patty Lyons. It was like great for me. And so meeting a lot of people and meeting the organization, like Gabby from the organization, meeting everybody, that was amazing. And then seeing all these designers that I really admire, like Hohi, Vieja, Aimee, everybody there. It looks like a dream. And also when we got, I don't know, every time we took the elevator, we would go up and down that panoramic elevator, and we would go up and down, and then you would look and everybody was knitting. Like every time I looked at, oh, there's people there knitting. Oh, these people are coming up and knitting. And even a couple, they approached me and they saw my name tag and they were like, oh, your crew is really big. They're like everywhere in the hotel. I was like, yeah, they're really big. Yeah.
Is there like a yarn festival of your dreams that you like haven't been yet, but dream to attend one day?
I have many. I want to go, well, Barcelona Knits. I would love to go. Rhinebeck. I think actually Nada has kind of brought a new dream for everybody that is traveling and knitting. Like
Yes,
you
it's
and Nada, maybe
interesting.
you guys are doing the best job. It's just like going, broadcasting, and having it all. It sounds like amazing. But I do want to actually, one thing that is not a festival, but the class I taught in Denver, the owner has alpaca farm. And I want to go to the alpaca farm, actually. That's my festival, 50 alpacas that you can hug them.
It's
That's my
fun. I did that last spring. I went to a farm tour in upstate New York, and one of the farms, Lilymore Farm, is where they have llamas and alpacas, and I got to hang out with them and hug them, and it was the best time ever.
Oh, let me see. Let me just find the name. Blazing Star Ranch. Blazing Star Ranch in Denver. The owner has like the alpacas, and that like when you buy her yarn, it's the name of the alpaca. So it's just amazing. So that's my crew. Like we used to have a retreat in Brazil. Me and my friend, we used to organize a retreat for like 15 people in Brazil in a sheep farm. That we would go there and then have a weekend with no Wi-Fi, nothing, no internet, just knitting and then like hanging out with the sheep. And then I just fell in love with the sheep. They're just amazing, amazing little animals. They're just the sweetest. Now I want to do the same with the alpaca.
Well, one of my dreams is one day to actually witness the Brazilian Carnival, and
Oh,
you were there this year, and not only were you there, but you made special outfit for that. So tell me a little bit about your experience and like what you love about it and how you guys prepare for it.
well, Carnival is the best. It's never in a specific date. It's 40 days before Easter, and Easter is the first full moon after the winter, the summer. Yeah, so it's 40 days before Easter. So this year it's going to be really early. It's never in the beginning of February, but tomorrow we start. Actually, I've started already. We went yesterday to a party. We went before yesterday. We're going tonight, but it does start tomorrow. So we do take Carnival really seriously in Brazil. Some people like to just stay home and knit, and that's okay. But it's just 5 days that we party as much as we can. And Brazil has the blocos. In Brazil, we have the blocos, which are like thematic parties outside in the streets. So we do have, for example, like I said, we do have the animal party. We do have this one that usually people make up names that make no sense. So we have the fenced chicken. We don't know why that's the name, but they play pop songs in carnival rhythms. So you listen to Rihanna, we listen to, I don't know, I think last year they had a lot of Taylor Swift. So this is a one that we love to go. And then since it's like 5 days, you have to dress like, oh, if I'm going to the animal, so I have to have an animal costume. So you have to prepare really much. I'm not as prepared as my friends. My friends are just the best. They have like, they already have all the outfits hanging in the rooms. They already have the makeup written down, like this is the makeup for today and stuff. I'm more like easygoing. I wake up and I decided what to wear, but I do have a top that I've knitted this time I have one knitted top and one crochet top that I'm wearing, especially because this summer in Brazil, it's been extremely, extremely warm. I think right now it's around 95 degrees. I have no idea, but I think it's 95 degrees. And so we do dress up, and it's good because it usually starts by 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and it goes like all night long. They have like a few parties as well. So I have one knitted top and one red knitted top that I did the pattern for a platform of a friend that does crochet. So I will have the pattern and the classes, the online classes for everybody who signed up in her platform. And I have this other top that I knitted a long time ago, that I crocheted a long time ago, and I never wear it. So I'll be wearing that one. Oh, and I also have a skirt, like open lace skirt that I did last year that I'll be wearing as well. So, but it's a lot of fun, a lot of glitter. Like we always say, when you're getting rid of the glitter from last year, you start filling your house with glitter again. So you just, everywhere you look, there is glitter. In the city, everywhere, just glitter. That's
So
it.
when it comes to carnival preparation for you specifically, do you go slow fashion or fast fashion?
I go slow fashion. Still, I go slow fashion. I do like recycle stuff. For example, last year, I think I took like some t-shirts and then I just like crop top them and then kind of started like, how do you say, tying them, and just, that's it. But I do repeat a lot of patterns. I do like to repeat. But I think most of my friends, they do like to recycle things. They like to take things, like, this is the fun part, is just making your own costume. So a lot of people, a lot of friends, they like to take stuff from their house and making up. A friend of mine had her computer broken, so she's opening up the computer and she's building like a head stuff with her computer pieces. It's just like, this is the memory I had that has been broken. This is like this. It's just turning into a costume. There is this one girl that is very famous in Brazil that she did, for years, she did her costume with garbage bags. She would just like tie up garbage bags, and that's her. Like, I'm the garbage bag from the carnival. This year it's been very popular doing posters, just like that dude with a sign and do that with a sign. A lot of people are doing posters as well. But we go a lot of slow fashion. I don't like to shop for, I think most people don't. I think people like to do it. And we see a lot of people teaching crochet and knitting for carnival as well. So yeah, I think most people go slow fashion and recycled.
Do you think you're gonna put together a book one day about make your own costume for carnival?
Wow, that's a good
idea.
one. That's a good one. That would be the best idea ever. But I don't think I'm the best one on carnival idea. I have friends who are really good. My friends have no idea. My friends, they go like, when they run out of costumes, they make up a little bit more. Like a friend of mine one year, she had 5 costumes, and one of them she got wet because of the rain. She went home, and then out of a sudden she was dressed as a fortune teller, and I was like, how did you do it? I think I would do it with them. I think I would release their book.
Do you think that culture and like the climate and everything around you and the greenery, do you think that affects your pattern ideas?
Yes, I think so. We do like to use more fresh yarn. We like to use cotton. We do like to use linen, rayon. We do like this kind of designs. And every time I make a design, I can even like knit a design in wool. But I usually like to knit it in cotton as well, in short sleeve. Brazil has a very big culture for cotton and summer yarn. So every time I do it, I try to do it as well in cotton or something more fresh and more like thinking about other states that have like warmer weather. São Paulo, we do have some cold. I do wear my wools in winter, like for 2 or 3 days, we do wear it. But most of places, it's just like, I think one of my assistants that work with me, he's from the Northeast. And then in the winter, he's always telling me like, yeah, it's cold here. It's like 85 degrees. And I was like, oh yeah, really cold. I imagine suffering.
Practically freezing.
Yeah.
I was recently talking to designer from Australia, Dia Prue, and she mentioned that like her dream is to be recognized as one of the top designers of Australia one day. Is that your dream, to be recognized as like the ambassador of every fiber arts from Brazil?
Well, that's a dream. That's totally a dream. I think for not bragging about it, but for such a long time, after being in a, like when I was cover of a famous magazine and newspaper in Brazil, I think for a long time, was me and another friends, we were really search for that. We do have a lot of, what I love about what happened in the last 10 years is just like we have a lot of ambassadors at this point. For some point I was it, and then I think having the magazine and having somebody like actually paying attention that this was happening, and having the journalist that did the whole interview, not only with me but with other designers, I think that was really important for other people that we see today. They're really like, they have a bigger audience than I do. They have like, they're bigger than I am here in Brazil, but they saw in me like, oh, she did it, so I can do it as well. So, oh, I could do this in YouTube, I could do this, and you know. So, but I would love to be the ambassador and taking the whole history of crafts from Brazil. I keep like researching and studying it, so that every time I can, how do you say, I can embrace it more. For every time I go like to vogue knitting, how can I take more of my culture? So this is one of the things I want to shift, like, oh, we're known for summer, and so let's have it more summer in my designs as well. So yeah,
I mean,
would
I
love to.
love that. And I was very happy when they got to meet at Vogue, just because I love finding people from different parts of the world. You know, like I know if I'm gonna ever come to São Paulo, I know already so many crafters, brilliant crafters and designers from there. And that's my favorite part of Fiberchats. Not only I get to chat.
Yes, please come. We have this sentence that we tell every famous person. Like if you go to, like, I don't know, any famous person Instagram, you always have this sentence that is, please come to Brazil. So I'm telling you, Irina, please come to Brazil.
I'd love that one day. It's definitely on my bucket list of places to.
Yes, Brazil is amazing, and Rio is like Rio is so crazy that it's such a very violent place. But every time you go there, like, service is terrible. It's really warm. Things don't work. You get robbed by the taxi. But anyways, you get to the beach, you're just like, oh my God, this place is heaven. How how can I have suffered all of this to get here? And when I get to the beach, it's just like, how come this place exists in the world? It's just amazing. So it's an amazing place. And Northeast, like, all Brazil is just amazing. And São Paulo as well is just the place I chose. So I love it.
Well, I want to thank you for being my guest today and and I hope next time we'll meet in Brazil.
Yes, in Brazil. Please come to Brazil. You will love it. And actually, we do have, like I said, we do have a very strong craft community. And actually, one thing that has been growing a lot is textile arts. We've been seeing a lot of it in museums and galleries and stuff. It's growing a lot. So we have a lot of things to talk about here.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put all the information about you and how people can find you in the description of this video. So guys, please subscribe and follow and do all the things you usually do with Cristiane now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for the interview. It was amazing.